A lot of glare. Hi, everyone. It's Debbie from White Wizard Games. How are y'all doing? I hope you're doing well. Tonight we have a combo deal. I'm really excited about it. We are going to give a quick intro. I'm going to give a quick intro into if you don't have Tabletop Simulator and you don't know how to get a game on there. I'm going to give you a quick intro to that really quick. And then I'm going to hand off to Chris Swan, who is going to show you all around Tabletop Simulator and how to play KAPOW in Tabletop Simulator. So I love it because I know we've had it up, but not everyone is a Tabletop Simulator expert. So I'm excited about this tutorial series. So let's get started. So I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop. This is my desktop. So if you want to play a game on Tabletop Simulator, first of all, you need Tabletop Simulator. So I want to talk a little bit about this. Tabletop Simulator only runs on Steam. So if you don't have Steam on your computer, you can get it if you're on it. You need a computer. And if you're on a Mac or PC, it works on both. And I'm not going to explain how to get Steam, but if you don't have Steam, the first step you would need to do is to go and install Steam. So if you just Google how to install Steam on your computer, you'll find, the official site and you can download that and run it. So once you have Steam, I'm going to go ahead and open up my Steam here. It's down here in my bar. And I'm just going to show you a little bit about Steam so that if you're not familiar with it and you want to get Tabletop Simulator, I'm going to show you how to do that. So the store button here up in the top left-hand corner is where you would buy Tabletop Simulator. You have to buy it. It's usually around $20. Occasionally it goes on sale. But there's a little search window up here in the top right. So if anyone ever tells you about a cool game on Steam, go to the store and you go to the search bar. So if you typed in Tabletop Simulator, it will come up as right here as an option and you could buy it. I already own it, so it's already showing for me, but you could go ahead here and buy it if you didn't buy it. So once you own it and you want to play a game, a couple of things. There's a bunch of games in Tabletop Simulator that you can play. So I'm going to go to my library. When you buy games on Steam, if you click on the library up here in the top menu, it will show you the games that you own. And if you click on Tabletop Simulator, you can click here and click play. So there's a couple different ways to play games on Tabletop Simulator. If you download within Tabletop Simulator, there's games you can download within Tabletop Simulator and play, and you'll see those within Tabletop Simulator. In our case with KAPOW, and for many publishers and a lot of indie publishers in particular, if they're asking you to try out their games or play test, they will create what's called like a workshop on Steam, which is basically a mod that they're uploading into the Steam community that you can then get access to. The way that you get access to the mod is someone will provide you a link, and it's called a workshop link. So we shared this for KAPOW. We said, here's the workshop link. Click on this link and subscribe. I will, once I'm done with this quick demo, I'll put the link in the chat. So if you want to download this workshop, you can. But to download a workshop, you log into Steam. You need to be on your Steam account. And then you go to the URL. And then at that URL, you can click subscribe and subscribe to that workshop. And then once you're subscribed, then you go into Tabletop Simulator and then you will see the workshop in there. A lot of workshops are also publicly available. So under community, you can click on workshop, and in the workshop, you can search for workshops and see workshops that are in there. So if someone's workshop, Rob just joined me. Hi, Rob. If someone's workshop is publicly available, you can search here and find it. And I did ask, we're going to have the KAPOW one in here. It probably is in here already. But you can also search there, but I will also post a link so you can go to it directly. So again, I'm going to go and I'm just going to show you. So say you installed Tabletop Simulator, you bought it, you installed it. I'm going to go ahead and click play, just show you a tiny bit about how it works. And then again, I'm going to hand off to Chris and he's going to get into the meat of KAPOW. And we're going to beat down some heroes or villains, depending on which side you want to play on. And I'm just going to show you really briefly what it looks like when you get into Tabletop Simulator. So when you go into Tabletop Simulator, the menus are not that intuitive, but these two big buttons are pretty intuitive. This is called the main menu. So once you're in and going about your business, you'll see go back to main menu. This brings you here. So if you ever want to exit the game, you got to go back to the main menu, and this power button will get you out of Tabletop Simulator. I'm mentioning that right away because I was very confused about how to exit this game when I first played it. The other two really big buttons here, which are really obvious, is either join or create. So I'm first going to show you how to create. So if you wanted to create a game and you had already subscribed to the workshop, you would say single player, multiplayer, hot seat. So I'm going to go ahead and just say multiplayer. You would name your server. So I'm going to name my server Deb Sorcerer. You can type in any name you want. And what this is for is if you want to invite a friend to play with you, you give them the name of the server, and I'll show you in the join button, they can type that in. So make sure you know whether it's uppercase, lowercase, and then you can optionally add a password as well, and you can say how many people can be here. And then you click create server, and it creates a game. I'm going to select Sorcerer just to show you really quick what that would look like. So that was under the workshop section. That's where you would find KAPOW. So, and then you have it set up, and me and a friend. So any friend that went in and joined my game would be in here. I'm not going to go through the details of, we have a separate video on how to play Sorcerer. So this menu button can get me back to the main menu. I'm going to go back to the main menu and just show you really quick how to join a game. If you're watching the stream and you want, you can join into the server for the demo tonight. So Chris Swan, who's doing the demo, gave me the name of the server. Look at all these servers playing. And sometimes cool thing about Tabletop Simulator is you can join a game of like people you don't even know playing if you want to. So a lot of people make their games public and you can join. The name of the server for tonight is called KAPOW. And then you just click on it and then you enter the password. And the password for tonight is wizard. I'll click OK. And now I'm actually going to be in the game that Chris Swan already started, and the players who are participating in our demo tonight are already in there ready to play. So that's, again, a really quick intro. So I'm going to hand off to Chris now, and he is going to walk you through how to play KAPOW. Hi, Chris.
Hi there. Hi, Deb. How's it going? Glad I could be here tonight with you guys to be able to explain KAPOW. So we have our players who have joined in from TotalCon. Unfortunately, we are actually missing one of our players who is going to join us. Might be the case where I'll need to be one of the players during the stream, but we'll go through the explanation of the game, and then I'll take a seat and with the other player who's playing, and be able to then go through a playthrough of it. If we do have anyone on the stream who's interested and took down the server and password, you could join in, and I can go through the explanation and have then.
Yeah, I see Game Freak is watching on YouTube, okay. And they had messaged me and just earlier that they were interested. I don't know if you had sent them a message, but if you're watching Game Freak and you're there, if you want to pop on the server and just go to Tabletop Simulator and type in join server name KAPOW and password wizard, you could join as a player.
Okay. So we're going to get started with a quick explanation. In KAPOW, we're going to be rolling a bunch of different dice to simulate the attacks and defenses by our superhero and villain. So we're in this this battle between a superhero and villain, and so right now, if LEP, would you like to select your player color? You're going to need to choose either between the green or the red player position, and how you do that is you go up into the top right-hand corner where your ID is, and click on that, and then hit change color and select then either seat, either the green or the red seat, and those are then just going to be either playing as the heroes or the villains respectively. And then okay, so we have Dark Matter, who's also been able to join us and has taken seat as well, so we'll get started here. Great. Okay, and I will then just be setting up as Game Master. So what's really been nice, White Wizard has worked with someone to have this game set up and scripted for us. So there are a couple of different things that I'll be explaining within Tabletop Simulator that we'll need to know to be able to use some parts of the game, but it really means it's a lot of it's quite automated and makes it a lot easier to do something that's difficult to replicate in a digital space. So to start out here, we have two different game options. We have the solo game as well as the two-player game over here. And so I'll just be clicking on that first to get the game started, since we have both players at their seats. And so then out in front of you, you have your player board for each of the players. And at the top, you're going to have these options to be able to select through some of the heroes and villains that you can play with. Now, what's recommended for the first time, if you haven't played the game before, is just playing without one of those additional hero or villain sheets, and just playing with the standard player aid. But if you want right now, you can quickly flip through by hitting the next button and see some of the options that would be available if you were playing with a hero or villain. And so you can see that there's a variety of different then specialties, and each one gives a strategy and differences to how you would maybe play the game if you were using them. Once you flip through all of them, it'll go back to where it's blank, and then we can hit select once you're there, so that then both of you are playing without a chosen hero or villain. And again, that's just because as a learning game, it's easier just to get you started with the basic player board. Okay, so once both players have hit and select there, as you can see, we have screens that then have dropped down over each of the player areas. Now, while I do the explanation, I'm just going to bring those back up so that it's a little bit easier for us to see what's going on. There's a button on the side here that then shows and hides results, and that's because during the course of the game, there's a couple of different phases, but one of the really fun and interesting parts is where we'll be rolling dice behind each of our screens, and then based on those results, allocating dice to do different attacks, defenses, and power-ups that we then perform during the second phase of the round. So the game's played over multiple rounds, and each player is trying to knock down their opponent and drop their health points down to 0. So as you see on the side here, we each start out with 20 health points. And in the, I believe in the Volume 2 version that is coming out from White Wizard Games of KAPOW, they are then going to be including this scoring dial that you can then keep track of your score on. The original game had it as a board in the middle with little trackers on them. Just for the players that are playing and for everyone who's watching, to be able to control your tracker over here, you will right-click on it, and then there is an increase and a decrease command that can then change the values of the dial. A lot of the stuff that is available here that is automated, you'll be able to access through the right-click menu. So whenever you're looking over an object, you can right-click it, and then it'll have a couple of different options that maybe are available to interact with it. I'll go through each of the items and explain how that works for each type, but just so you know, right-click, and that's where you're going to see a lot of your choices. Okay, so we have the basic layout here, and as I say, we'll have the screens down once I've done an initial explanation. But each player will be starting out with a set of dice, and so for the basic, the learning game, you will be starting out with one of each of the dice color here, and these are your non-action dice. So in the game, there are two different types of dice. You have these are your regular dice here, and then your action dice, which have these blank white faces initially on them. In the physical version of the game, those are the dice that you are then going to be able to manipulate by taking off and adding different dice faces to it. In this version of the game, that's represented a little bit differently just because it's a digital version. So we actually have the dice faces placed out off to the side here, next to the dice that we're using. And so those dice face will then be able to add on to that initial white dice. And so if we check here, you'll see that this dice that we start out with doesn't have any dice face on it, but each player starts out with one wild face. So if you take your cursor and you mouse over these different circular discs here, those are the faces, and they then indicate how many of each type you currently have in your stock. So both players start out with one wild face over here, and so what you can do is we can add that face onto your action die. How you go about doing that is you're going to right-click on your action dice, and then you'll see that there's a large menu that pops up with a bunch of different options. So both the green and the red player, and I'll refer to you by the color just for ease during this game playthrough. So if you right-click on your action dice, you'll then see a a variety of different options of adding different dice faces to that dice. What you're looking for is to see the plus and then the name of the dice face with a slash and then a color. So those are going to be able to add these different dice face to that action die. So what we want to do first is we want to be able to add that wild face to our die so that we can at least have that when we start playing the game. Later on, we'll be able to gain additional faces, and then during each round, before we roll dice, we're able to then manipulate those action dice to add on whichever faces we are wanting to play with. So we can go ahead as we're getting started here. So just to try this out so that you get a sense of how this works, each player is going to right-click on their action dice here, and then select the wild or white face on the list of options. So the green player, if you also want to, yeah, okay, great, you just did. And so if you notice over here, you'll see that the wild face has been added to this dice. The red player, you can do the same for this here. Yeah, perfect, okay. So both players have then been able to add that wild face on there. And then if you put your mouse, your cursor over the wild face on the side, you'll see that it's dropped down to 0 because we've used that face on this action dice. We'll be doing that multiple times during the course of the game. So making sure that you understand that before we get started with some of the other aspects. Okay. So we also have then these fixed dice that we have over here, which have a specific set of faces that are on them. Now, in order to explain that, I'm going to drop down the little screen because it actually has a neat little player aid for us to be able to view this. And so what you'll need to do, you'll need to zoom in to be able to view the screen. Most items within the game, you'll be able to zoom in by holding the Alt key. So on your keyboard, you can look at the player board here by hitting the Alt key, and it zooms in. But unfortunately, the screen you'll need to zoom into, so you can do that by using your scroll wheel in whichever direction you're needing to zoom into. And so zooming in, you'll be able to then see there's a guide here to what the trait dice, what the values of the faces that they contain are. So if we're looking just to the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see the trait dice. We have the blue, red, yellow, purple, and green dice, which we start with one of each. And on there, it shows you the different breakdowns of what the dice faces are on that dice. So as you can see, each dice normally has more of whichever color it represents, but it does sometimes have a wild face or possibly some other face that's related to what they would do. During the course of the game, we'll be gaining combinations of trait dice and action dice, and so getting a good sense of sort of what you're trying to go after as we play can be helpful to view the screen with that guide. Now, each of the dice faces we have represented, they represent different symbols we'll be using to do things during the course of the game. So while I explain this, I'm just going to bring up the screens again, just so that we have a clear view of the player boards. So out on the player boards, you'll see some of the symbols then represented in the different options we have to play actions during the course of the game. So the first phase of the game, we'll be rolling all of these dice that we have and then allocating them to different spaces out here on the player board. So for example, if we have this blue dice over here, we could then place it out and we rolled the X factor side of it. We would then be able to place it out onto any of the spaces with the X factor symbol. So each of the symbols are then matching up with the symbols out on the board here. And then what you're going to need to do is allocate the dice in order to then get the benefit on the right-hand side. So for example, over here we have Biff, which is just a simple attack, a base attack of 1. And this requires us to have any dice. So any dice that we roll, we can then allocate it to that space, and that will then give us a base attack of 1. That's also the case with the defend over here with the dodge. So we could also allocate any one of our dice to that, and that gives a base defense of 1. We can also do that over here at the power-up, where we have time jump, which allows us to re-roll dice. So again, allocating a dice, any dice to be able to get that ability. Now, some of the abilities are going to require you to place multiple dice there. So if there are 2 or more symbols showing up in in the left-hand side of an option, you're going to then need to place that number of dice with those faces showing. So most of the requirements are the basic faces that we have, but the other some of the spaces are going to either have the any dice symbol, which we see over here. Other ones are going to have ones like this non-blank action dice, or we have some others like a non-blank dice face, so meaning any face that doesn't have a blank side to them. And some of the trait dice, as well as initially 5 of the sides of the action dice, will be blank, so you wouldn't be able to use those for those options. And then later on, some of the most powerful actions we have are going to require multiple dice of specific face types to be able to really execute those extreme, multipliers and power-ups that will be able to get access to. So we're doing that with that initial die roll. One of the power-up abilities that we're going to be using often, if you're not getting a good roll and you're wanting to maybe take a second chance on some of the dice that you've rolled, is this time jump ability. So this allows us to use it immediately while we're allocating dice. And both this and the quick breath are immediate abilities, and that means that while we're rolling the dice behind our screen, we'll then be able to choose to do that. You'll then leave the dice that you chose to use for that ability on the space, so on top of the space where it's being used, and then you get to use that ability. So either time jump to re-roll a dice, or quick breath to gain additional health and add it directly onto your health tracker over here. Okay, all the other abilities that we have out here are ones that are going to be used during the second phase of a round. So we've allocated a bunch of dice out to the different actions we want to perform, and then once both players are ready, we'll then reveal the choices they've made by lifting the screens back up. And based on those choices, we'll then go through the different phases of attack, defense, defend, and power up. So when we get to that point, we'll be starting based on which player has the first player token. So initially, at the beginning of the game, the first player is going to be the villain. So the green player right now is the villain in this case, as shown by their health tracker over here, and that would also be indicated by possibly the superhero sheet that you might use in the advanced version of the game. In the advanced version, when you're comparing superheroes and villains, there might be the case where you are starting out with less health. So whichever player is playing with less starting health, they would instead be the first player. So the villain is going to be the one starting with the first player marker, and then that will be the player that then is going to perform the first attack. So what happens here is we're going to look and see which dice you've allocated to attack. And then based on that allocation, that will then create a total amount of attack that you are then performing on the opposing player. We'll then go and see which locations on the defend space the opposing player has placed or allocated dice to. So they will then add up the total defensive abilities that they have, and they will have a total from that as well. And then we will compare the attack versus defend, and whatever the difference is will then, if it's a positive difference, will then be how much damage is caused to the opposing player. So we're comparing our attack and defense value, and then the opposing player taking any damage if the attack is stronger than the defend. We then go ahead and do that as well for the second player. So again, first player doing their attack and comparing with the defending player, and then the second player doing their attack and comparing with the defending player. And how this works, if we look at the player aids, is we're adding up a couple of different things, different areas that will add up to give that total value. So for both of the players, again, if you want to zoom into this player aid to view it a little bit larger, you can hit the Alt key, and that'll give you a larger zoom in. So what I'm going to be talking about is the different sections within attack and defend and how those work. So if you look at the top of both attack and defend, we have a section called your base attack. Now, in order to have any value in either attack or defense, you need to have at least some dice allocated in that section. And when you allocate dice into that section, you'll be choosing one of the 4 options. So you can either have the base attack of the Biff, which has just a value of 1, or you can do your Zap, Pow, or Clock. and so you're choosing one of the 4, and then that is your base value for your attack. If you don't put any dice in that location, you're not going to be able to perform any attack of any value. So you need to make sure that you have that base value at least in order to perform an attack on your opponent. After you've done that, and if you have additional dice that you want to allocate as well to attack, you can then start adding attack kickers, which is the second section, or attack multipliers. So in attack kickers, we have wallop, slug, and shellac, and there you can add dice onto those different spaces to then get additional amounts of attack added on. And as you can see, the little plus symbol, so you're adding that as an addition onto the base attack that you have. And then at the final section, we have the attack multipliers, and those you'll be then choosing one of those if you have enough dice for that, and those are really the most powerful attack modifiers that you can use. And there you'll then be adding both an addition as well as a multiplier. So there you can see on the blast we have a +2 attack kicker and a ×2 multiplier. So we're taking the base attack, adding that attack kicker, and then multiplying it by 2. So it can generate a lot of attack points that can go against your opponent. All of what I've described about with attack also happens in defense. So again, you're wanting to have that base defense value as seen in the top section, and you're choosing one of those 4 to perform. Then you can add on a defense kicker, and then possibly one of the defense multipliers if you have enough dice to be able to do that. You'll also see under defend that there are additional benefits that you get for doing certain defensive, making certain defensive choices. Most of those are going to involve you gaining specific certain types of faces. And so whenever it says gain a face or gain a non-wild face, it's talking about those circular discs that we have out here in the digital version, or in your physical version, it would be the dice faces that you're going to be attaching onto the action dice. So the reason why this is that even if you don't get to use your defensive value to protect against an attack, even then when you invest in defense, you get to gain dice faces that you can then start adding to your action dice. So it has sort of the double benefit of defending against your attack of your opponent, but also gaining you some action dice that you can use during the next round. Okay, and so we would then be going through and checking the attack and defense. Once we've done that, we'll then determine who the next first player is. So in Volume 2 of KAPOW, which is the one that's coming out from White Wizard Games, the first player token is determined each round by whoever generated the most defense that round. So we're comparing the defensive values that each player had generated, and whoever has the highest defense would then be gaining the first player marker. If there, however, is a tie, the player that currently has the defense marker would then just keep it. But the first player marker would just keep it. But if the opposing player had a higher defense value, then it would be traded and switched over to that player. And again, the first player marker come into play when we're doing the attack and defense, or which player is doing that first. But it's also going to determine in which order we then complete the final section of the player board. So we have the power-up section, and whichever player has the first player marker, which may have changed if a player played more defense than another and it switched possession from one player to the other, the first player will then be choosing which power-ups they'll be doing based on the dice they've allocated. So I already explained the first 2 power-ups, which are the ones that are immediate and that you get to do while we're rolling dice. But the other abilities that you get as power-ups, you're then going to be performing after we've completed attack and defense. So we can go through, and you'll see that the description for the type of abilities is shown off to the left-hand side. And so we have several that are going to gain us a variety of different dice. So you're going to be either gaining trait dice, which are the ones that are shown with that sort of like a rainbow-colored selection on them, and those are these ones that have the fixed dice faces. The other type of dice is your action dice, which are shown with that sort of like gray empty square, and that's because those are the ones you're then going to be able to allocate dice faces to. So in the game, there's a limited supply of dice. So that is why sometimes it's important to be in the first player once you get to the power-up section, because you'll be making those selections based on whichever dice are left over here in the center of the table. And you'll then be taking those dice and adding them to your collection to be used in the next round. The other things that you can gain are shown below, where you have the gaining dice face. So you can gain those from defensive actions, but you can also gain them from these power-ups, where you can gain multiple dice face of different types, as seen down at the bottom of the power-up section. Okay, and so those are most of the power-ups covered. During the course of the game, I can go into some of the detail of each one of them, but I want to get us started and get us playing, and then we can cover some of those. And the other part is this is going to be a learning game, so for both players, don't feel any pressure, that you need to win. Try things out. Explore all of the different options that are provided in order to play the game, and your strategy might change throughout it. So don't be afraid to explore and really try out all the different things that happen, because you're superheroes, you're supervillains, so you want to be able to really get to use the full breadth of things that you can do. Okay, so once we've got some of our dice and dice faces, we'll then get to the end of the round, and at that point we'll then be able to modify our action dice, and you can put on and take off dice faces as you see fit, using again that right hand, the right click and the menu that then comes up to be able to change dice face. The other thing I'll point out that is helpful with the action dice that you'll need to use is being able to flip the dice to be able to view the different faces you have. So in Tabletop Simulator, a quick shortcut to being able to do that is when you have the cursor over the action dice, you can hit the 1 through 6 on your keyboard up at the top of the quirky side of the keyboard, and this will then allow you to flip to all of the 6 faces of the dice. The other way to do that, if you start remembering the value of that, is if you right-click, there is a section within the menu called rotation value, and that can then also change it if you aren't able to do it through the numbers. But the numbers is really the easiest way to be able to flip them over and see the different sides. Okay, if we're ready to start playing, I think I've covered everything we need to get going, and I'm going to be, of course, here and describing the game as well as answering any questions as we go along. Okay, so what we do first is we're going to, oh, and sorry, just before we get started, a couple of other helpful things within Tabletop Simulator, especially when you're dealing with dice to get things started. You're going to want to be able to select all the dice that you have on your side of the table. And in order to do so, you're just going to click and drag, and it'll create a little selection box that'll cover over the dice that you're selecting. That's how you can pick up multiple dice at the same time. Once you've done that, you can click and hold, and they will then be all picked up at the same time. And you can then move them over to your player board to then be able to roll them together. The ability to roll dice, you can either, as you can see here, the red player busy shaking them about, or if you want to, you can hit the R button, and that will then allow them to be thrown up in the air and rolled randomly for you to get a final result. So what we'll be doing is we'll be doing that behind our screens once we get the screens put down, and you'll then be able to roll them. Once you've done that, then to be able to pick up a single piece, a single dice, you want to click back on the table to clear your selection, and then pick up each dice and move it to whichever space you're wanting to use it in. So, for example, here using the blue X factor, then placing it on its space. And luckily, each of the spaces does have a little snap to it, so it should pop into the space that you're wanting to use it on. Okay, that should cover it. If any questions arise as we're playing, I'm again going to be helping. Okay, so as I said, we're going to do those rolls behind the screen so that neither player knows what results were rolled, and so they won't know exactly what's going to be coming about. Okay, so if both players want to go ahead and select all of their dice and move them onto their player board and give them a roll, we can get things started. Okay, and Green, did you re-roll your dice a second time just so that your opponent didn't get to see what was rolled. There we go. Okay, so now you're going ahead and taking those dice and allocating them out onto the different spaces on the board based on what you think you want to do. To see all of what? All of the dice? Okay. So the ability to be able to zoom in, if you hit the Alt key, and the Alt key or the mouse wheel, be able to zoom into it. But the easiest way, if you're looking at a specific item on the table, is to hit the Alt key and then just have your cursor over that object. So that'll be able to allow you to see the dice as well as the player board in a zoomed-in view. So again, I think it would be are you able to zoom with the mouse wheel? I'm trying to think. Okay, so it would be just your mouse wheel zooming in and out to move. Oh, sorry. If you hold down your mouse key, your mouse wheel, and then drag backwards and forwards, that'll allow you to then be able to move backwards and forwards. The other way to do that is with no, I don't remember. Oh, it's with the W and S keys on your keyboard. Okay. So when you're selecting where to place dice, it's based on the dice face itself. And so some of the dice, especially your trait dice, might have faces that have a different color from what they show. So for example, here we have the red dice, which has two of the faces have a blue and a yellow result. So you're really looking at the symbol more so than the actual color of the dice. The dice itself is just representative of the traits that it's more likely to have, but that doesn't mean that that's what gets rolled when you roll it. Not a problem. So the lightning bolt is going to be your, okay, yeah. So the lightning bolt is a wild dice face, and so that allows you then to be able to choose any of the dice faces that you want to use it for. So it's shown up in the quick reference up at the top of the screen and shows you that you can then use it in place of any dice face. So that is really the most versatile of the faces because it's wild. And I see we have a quick question. Yes, of course, yeah. So for everyone who's following along on the stream, we're playing at Total Con, and so we have within the Discord, one of our players has joined us through that, and so I'm talking and helping guide through some of the questions. And I'll make sure to repeat those questions here so that everyone can hear who's following along on the stream, as well as go ahead. Okay, so what I'm going to ask from both players once you're done is just sort of wave your mouse cursor off to the side here, and then I'll know to be able to then open the screens for both players. Okay. Okay, so it looks like both Dark Matter and LEP, you are ready. Okay, so then what we do is we raise the screens and we get started. Okay, so first player is the villain to start off with. And so the super villain here is going to then be doing the first attack. So you've set up with Biff, which is an attack of 1. So that is then defended by the single dodge from the other player. Okay, so then once that's resolved, so 1-to-1, so there's no a difference of 0. So that then means that there was no damage done for that. Then we move over to the second player, who set up. Okay, and sorry, I didn't catch this when we were getting set up with the fact that when you were placing out the dice, and my apologies if this wasn't clear during the initial explanation, but the base attack value over here, you are choosing one of the 4 of them in order to be able to perform, and then after that adding in the different values below. So unfortunately, you're not able to add both a 1 and a value 3 base attack. You need to choose between the two in order to perform that. And so again, that might have been something that wasn't as clear in the explanation, and it's a little tricky to sort of follow exactly what was allocated. But so what would need to happen is that these would need to have been allocated elsewhere instead of over here, because the total value would be either one or the other. So what we could do for the red player, if you would like, is if you want to allocate the biff dice so that you're still getting a base attack of 3, you can allocate that maybe somewhere else in your power-ups or something of that sort, if that's okay. No, okay. Saying that, no, that's fine. And again, it could easily have been my explanation. So then, if it's okay, we'll just go through with the way you want to allocate it. Okay, great. So just, or we can just put it off to the side and just go through with the way that it's set up. Here, what we could use it for, if you want, is chin up over here, because this requires any dice face, and then it'll get you a non-wild dice face for doing so, if that would work. Okay, and so while I'm doing that, actually, green player, you will also need to reallocate dodge, because the same goes for the base defense value here. You wouldn't use it in 2 of the 2 spots, so you would need to use it then in one of the other places. So again, for the red player, what we're doing is instead just reallocating it to chin up over here. So just taking this dice over here and placing it here. And again, that's just to retcon it, or to rectify the fact that we messed up on how the base defense works. So both of you will be then luckily getting an additional dice face, which will be nice for the next round. Okay, so then we have an attack of 3 from the second player, which was the zap, and then we have a block of 2 from the first player for having done the block action. Okay, so then what you'll do, the green player will then lose 1 point of health, because the block of 3 versus an attack, a block of 2 versus an attack of 3. So to change this, you'll then go along and right-click on each of the dials. Yeah, so there you've changed it to 1, and then right-clicking that and reducing that, or increasing it or reducing it. Okay, so yeah, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so that was the damage done. Now, what we're also going to do and check and see is the fact that you also gain 1 non-wild face for having done the block defense ability. For the second player, you didn't gain any benefit. It was just the base defense of 1 for that. So we will resolve that right now. And so how you do that is a non-wild face means any of the colored faces over here. What you're going to do is you're going to right-click on it and then go and hit the take chip action, and then it should pop up over here on your dice faces as one of the chips that you've taken. Okay, so we have the green player choosing the might chip, which is then added over into their collection over here. Okay, so we've completed the defend and attack portion of that phase. Now, the player with the most defense then keeps the first player marker, which then will stay with the green player in this case, because of the defense of 2 versus 1. Okay, so then because of that, the green player will be the starting player to do all of their actions within the power-up section. So we'll go through, and we can go through, and you can do them in any order. But so we have the ability to gain 1 of the trait dice. So those are the colored dice out here. And then to gain a non-wild face. So again, one of the colored faces over here. So green, if you want to decide which ones you want to get. And so you'll just pick that up and then bring it off to the side, ready for you to then roll it based on which one you choose. Okay, so yeah, if we want to see the dice faces, I'll just quickly put down the screens again, and then you can see what the trait dice are over here. Okay, bring that back up. Okay, so taking one of the trait dice, and then also one non-wild dice face, and again right-clicking on it and hitting take chip. Okay, so took one of the X Factor chip dice face. Okay, so then we move on to, so you've completed all of your power-up abilities, and we move on to then the second player. So you get to choose one, the red player gets to choose one non-wild dice face. Excuse me. And so to be able to select that, you then, coming along over here, right-clicking, and then choosing which one by hitting the take chip action. If you're wanting to see, okay, so you took the red my chip, which then you can see here how many of each you have available to you. Okay, so now that we've done that, what you're able to do is then add these dice face onto the dice that you have out on your board. So what's probably easiest is to click and drag all the dice off to the side so that we can see what dice we have to roll for the next round. And then I'll go through and quickly help both players get set up with the action dice by adding the dice face that they have. So, okay. I see that the red player is trying to join us on the Discord so that they can ask directly the questions directly. Okay. So we have our dice off to the side, and there we have one more dice here. This is your action dice. So what we're going to be doing now is adding, if you want, adding dice face onto the action dice. So like I explained before, being able to flip this requires using the 1 through 6 keys up on your keyboard. And so you're going to want to flip it to one of your empty faces. So right now, for the red player, you already have an empty face available. For the other player here, you're going to want to flip this. There we go. So that's one of your empty faces. Now, how you add a dice face to it is you're going to right-click on that empty face and then select the dice face that you want to add from the list that drops down off to the right. And so it'll then it'll probably give you an error if you don't have that dice face, so you want to quickly check and see which ones you have, but otherwise you're then selecting from the ones you have and adding it on there. And later on, once we get to where we have multiple action dice, you can pick and choose, and you can take on and take dice face off as you go around, Okay, and just to remind you as well, for the green player, you do actually have an additional dice face because you got that blue X Factor dice face. So what you can do is you can roll the flip the dice to another empty face and add that if you want to right now. And again, every round you're free to rearrange those faces however you need. So just because you've added it on right now doesn't mean it can't come off and be added to a different dice later on. And part of the fun of the game is playing around with the probabilities of those action dice and what they might be able to generate for you. Okay, so both players have been able to get their dice set up, and this is the case in the physical game as well as here, is that both players, all information is open to both players until we put the screens down and then start rolling dice, but which dice have which faces on is open information, so you can either ask or have a quick look before we move on. Okay, so go ahead. That's correct. Yes, so some of the trait dice do actually have blank faces, and so if I bring the screen down and we have a look quickly at the trait dice guide over here, you'll see that some of the dice actually only have 5 faces shown on here, and that's because one of the faces is blank. And actually, looking at the guide here, I see that the red dice is the only dice that does not have any blank faces. So all other trait dice have a 1 in 6 chance of rolling a blank face. The red dice having no blank faces, but having still only 3 red faces compared to the other ones. Okay? Not a problem. Okay, and so actually now that we have the screens down and we've set up our dice, both players can go ahead and roll their dice. The areas are hidden from the other player. The whole the green or red area is masked from the other player, so you can roll it anywhere within that space and then place the dice out based on that roll. Okay. Okay. So let me see. A blank counts as yes, any dice face. It's just some of the selections say any non-blank dice face, and so for that case, you would then be not being able to use a blank face on that. But whenever it says any dice or any dice face, then you can use that blank face in that position. Sorry, just following along with. Okay, yeah. And the other player is still making their choices. Okay. Both players ready? Okay, great. So we will show the results. Okay, so we go through and we're then checking attack and defense, starting with the first player. Okay, so first player here is attacking with 6 plus a modifier of 2, so a total of 8. So we're then going to compare that to the defensive value of 1 plus 1, so a total of 2. So that will then mean a total of 6 damage, right? It was 8. Yes, 8 attack to 2 defense, so doing a total of 6 damage. And so then the red player, you'll be then modifying this, and again, right-clicking to increase or decrease the different values. And so dropping down to 14 and switching that to. Okay. And so then we did all of that. Okay, so then we compare the other ones. So the red player has an attack, base attack of 3 plus a kicker of 3, so a total of 6. And then, I did my screen change? Sorry. So a total of 6, and so that's then going to have going up against a defense of 2 plus 1, so a total of 3. So 3 damage to the green player. Okay. And then while we're doing that, so actually this is something I forgot, because I think that the defensive kickers are added based on the order in which players are defending, and so the first player was the first to attack, so the defending player at that moment would be able to then gain the benefit of their defensive choices. So you could, the red player, you can gain 1 non-wild dice face. So choosing 1 from over here, right-clicking on it and taking it to add it to your collection. And while the red player is deciding on that, the green player, you're able to, you're going to be choosing 2 non-wild dice face, so you can be considering what you want. Okay, so red took 1 red dice face, and then green, you can choose which ones you want, and you're again taking 2 of them because of the 2 that you have there. Okay, so one took 1 energy chip, 1 energy dice face, and 1 red might dice face. Okay, so the player with the highest defense gets the starting player token, which will then again stay with green, which has been you've been able to generate quite a bit of defense both times. Okay, we move on to the power-up section. So the only power-up that we need to resolve is then with the green player, who gets a chin-up ability, and so then you get to gain 1 non-wild dice face. Sorry, you get to gain one non-wild dice face because of the chin-up ability. Yep, you get a third one because of that ability over there as well. Okay, so there we go. So that resolves. That's the end of that round. So now we can take the dice off of our boards and start arranging the dice face over on our action dice. And remembering that you need to rotate the dice to an empty face to then be able to select it and add the face that you want. Rotating being with the 1 through 6 keys. Okay. Okay, I believe we have both players ready to then move on to the next round. So, is there any desire to look at the dice? You've been kind of following, hopefully along with which dice faces have been collected by both players. Okay, so bring the screens down and we can roll and get started for the next round. Trying to remember how to roll the dice. So, wild dice faces or the action dice itself? Yeah. So the action dice are available through the where is it? Through the gain dice abilities over here. We have the adapt. Adapt is a situational one, but then the power on is really the one where you can gain that action dice, additional action dice. Okay. And so just for the green player, I was just pointing out where you can gain action dice is over here under adapt and under power on. And I'm just trying. Okay, so I see the green player is ready and red is just still making some choices. So just a moment. Oh, no, sorry, I'm mixing another. Sorry, I was looking at the color of the hidden areas. Green is still making some choices. Red being ready for whenever we want. And sorry if I'm not describing too much of it at this point, but I don't want to give away too much to either of the players so that we can keep that information hidden. Okay, so we can. Red, are you still making a decision? I see you're readjusting one of the choices. Okay, So just helping out with your choices here, what would happen here for the red player is you would need to be placing 2 dice of the same value in order to then use that. And actually, this requires all 4 of those to be able to use it. Yeah, okay. Just to clarify that. Okay. Oh, no, and no, so you can, sorry, if there was something if you were, okay. Sorry, clarifying something as well. Choices, right? Okay, both players ready? We've got our dice locked in. Great. Okay, so bring up the boards. Okay, so we start with the attack coming from the first, the starting player marker. So we have a because this requires a non-blank action dice. So I know you had that set up a little bit differently just before we put the screen. Yeah, I'm just going to quickly put the screen down in case, so that hopefully you haven't seen. Sorry about this, Green. I don't want to let them know too much of what you had placed out, so they had messed up on the blank dice face. Okay, ready to go? Okay. Okay, so we go ahead and we are going to then check the attack. And just for everyone who's following along, what we were just correcting there was the fact that it's good to note that for some of these, the matching dice have to be non-blank action dice. And so that's quite a difficult requirement because, again, you're using only the action dice and they have to be the non-blank faces of it. So it's a little bit more difficult than, say, like the any dice or some of the other options that are available out on the board. Okay, so comparing the attack from the green player. So we have a base attack of 1, and then we have the attack kicker of 3, so a total of 4. And then that's okay. And then we have the defending player with a defense of 1 plus the kicker here of 5. Now, so another clarification here, and is the fact that for these larger kickers, this is actually showing all 4 dice that are required for it. So in this case here, it would have needed to actually also have 2 dice of equal dice face to be able to get that really high kicker on there. I'm trying to see how we can make an adjustment for this. And again, this is a learning game, so that's why we're going through some of these situations that come up with how we lay out dice here. So okay, so what I was going to see, so this is a wild anyway, so you'd be able to do this combination if you wanted as well, and get instead the plus 2 and a non-wild face to be able to still have that high level of defense, if that would work, unless there was some other combination that you would prefer. I know it's not quite as strong, but it's still being able to then generate a decent bit of defense coming in, and you will get the benefit of the non-wild. But so yeah, just for everyone who's no, that's not a problem. Again, that's why we're doing a learning game. That's why we're doing this explanation in the stream. So just for everyone's clarification, again, the fact that each section, if there are multiple symbols in a section for an action, all of them need to be fulfilled in order to be able to perform that action. And so some of them can, and that's what makes some of these larger ones so special, is they require a high number of different dice for them. Okay, yeah, 4. Well, even the 6 for these multipliers right down here at the bottom. So you would have to collect quite a few to be able to get to that point. Okay, so we have the defense of 3 with an attack of 4. So taking 1 point of damage for the red player. And then the red player getting to take a non-wild dice face as well. So moving down to 13 points, and then choosing one of the non-wild dice face over here. And I can do the reduction of the health over here to 13. And if you want to choose, okay, you chose one of the toughness chips. Great. Okay, so then we move on to the attack of the second player. So you're attacking with a base attack of 4, and then the defense of 1. So you're defending then with only 1, so it's a total of 3 damage, moving you down to 13 points as well. Now, because you defended only with 1 and your opponent had 3, we actually move the first player marker for the first time in this game across to the other player. To the red player, and so then the red player gets to perform their power-up abilities first. So we come along here. You can then choose another non-wild dice face. So you can choose from over here one more dice face to add to your collection, and that's because of the chin-up ability that you chose to use. The reason why you're performing your power-ups first is because you had the most defense and then gained the first player marker. Okay, so took another toughness chip. Okay, so those are all of the power-ups for the red player. So moving on to the green player. So you can go through, and again, you can choose in what order you want to do these, but most of the time there's not too much of a difference because of the fact that you're just gaining, different dice and dice face at the same time since you do all of your power-ups together. Okay, so you're gaining 1 action dice, which are one of these black ones, and a non-dice face as well, and then you're gaining a second non-dice face, non-wild face, and then a second non-wild face as well. So a total of 2. And they can be the same or 2 different ones depending on what you want. So you took one of the might chips, one of the red ones, and then one of the agility, so the green ones. Okay, so both players have all of their power-ups complete. So we can take our dice off to the side and start adding our dice face to our action dice. Now, since the green player has multiple action dice, you can choose to remove and add dice face as in however you see fit. And in order to remove dice face, you turn up the face that you want to remove, you right-click on and hit the remove current, and that will remove it and add it back to your chips on the side here, and you should see then the number of chips added increased once you do that. So you're welcome to leave the dice face the way you want, or you can start manipulating those dice. That is the one part of being able to simulate this on Tabletop Simulator, is that it's probably a little bit easier to do that in the physical game, but it's still a lot of fun. So for everyone who's following along and wants to play, this game is available on Steam through Tabletop Simulator, and as Deb explained at the beginning, you can then log in and be able to play games later on. So once everyone's okay, yeah. So no, that's fine. So just asking how to remove a dice face, you're right-clicking and then hitting remove current. And again, I'm just explaining to everyone else so that we have that covered. Okay, so I see that the red player has placed all their dice face, and same with the green. In any other manipulation you would like to do, green player? Okay, so both players are set to go. So we can then drop down the screens again, and you're rolling your dice and allocating them. And this is how all of the rounds during the game go. Is a really quick and fun game to be able to play because of that. Simple, but there's a lot of choices, as you can see, out of your player boards. For those that are following along while we're waiting both the players, these are some of the great options you have just in the base player board. And then, as I say, there are a variety of different heroes and villains that you can play that give you specific powers that are only are unique to each of those characters. Yes, so a wild can count as whatever face you need it to count as, and because of that can be used whenever you need an equal face. Okay, I believe are both players ready to go? Okay, let's get started. Okay, so we have a different starting player this round. So we're going to start with the red player. You have a base attack of 4 plus the kicker of 2, so a total of 6 attack. And we have the defending player with a base defense of 1 plus the kicker of 1, so a total of 2. So 6 to 2, so 4 damage. So that'll drop you down to 9 points. And then it should rotate around. There we go. Okay, and then because you have one of your dice on a defensive spot that gives you a dice face, you get to choose one non-wild dice for the green player. Okay, so, and you've made your choice. Yeah, great. Okay, so then we come along with the attack for the green player. And so you have a base attack of 6 and then an attack kicker of 6, so a total of 12. There we go, starting to get into those high-powered attacks. And so that's coming up against a base defense of 1, so that's a total of 5 damage to the red player. So that'll put you down to 8 points. Oh, no, sorry, 12, sorry. Wait, I'm 12 minus 1. So that's 11. Sorry, I was thinking of so that's 11 points of damage. So that's going to drop the red player down to 2 points, unfortunately. And so just so that red player is following along with what's happened there is that being able to play the clonk, which got that base value of 6, and then the shellac, which added another. Yes, I know. Yeah, it's quite the hammering. But it did require rolling 4 might symbols to be able to even get to that point. So, and for everyone that's following along, so the shellac there requiring a might and what is it? A might and strength. I forget the other name. Oh, yep. And yes, defense is very important in this game. If you aren't prepared for the type of attacks, both players going very defensively. Okay, so going down to 2 points of health. So decrease to 0 and to 2. Okay, and then unfortunately not getting any dice race from that. Now the green player had the highest defense, so we move the first player marker across to them. And then you could do any power-ups if you had any, but you've added everything into your attack and have nothing in the power-ups. So then it switches back to the red player being able to perform your power-up ability. So you can go ahead and grab one of the action dice, as well as choosing one of the non-wild dice faces, which is your ability over here under Power On. Okay, so one of these empty dice, and then one of the non-wild dice over here. Okay, so now we can take off all of the dice off the board. The one other way, just another quick shortcut that can help with picking up dice, and if it's okay, I'm just going to show with your dice, is if you pick up multiple objects in a Tabletop Simulator, you can group them by hitting the G key. It only works, or unless I've turned that off. Okay, well, what I was about to show doesn't seem to be working quite well, and it might be something that the developer of the mod chose not to have available as well. Okay, so now that you have a second action dice, the red player would be able to then pick and choose what dice face you want on all of the dice that you have, and of the two action dice. So these are your two action dice. You have dice face already from what you gained from that last round, but you can choose to, if you want to, remove dice face from here and add them to this one, if it makes any sense to do so. You can also add all of your dice face onto one and leave the other one completely blank, and that's also perfectly fine. It depends on what distribution you think is going to work best for you. And red player, if you do have a choice of wanting to remove a dice face, I can go over again exactly how to do that, since this is the first time you're doing that. Okay. Are we both ready to play? Or are we? I see the red player is still doing some things. Are we ready to get started? Okay, not a problem. I'm happy to wait on you so that you can get yourself set up. And go ahead. Okay, so the wild face, being able to gain a wild face is shown. Where is it? Huh. I used to know where it says gain a face instead of saying a non-face. If it just says you gain one face, then that's how you would gain that. So, for example, the speed past, which is in the one of the defensive abilities over here, we have speed fast that says gain a face, as well as both of the multipliers in defense. And then over on the power up section, I think we have one under replicate, so you could replicate a wild face over there, or teleport, which is also similar to sort of the replicate where you're gaining the face shown, and then new plan. Yeah, so new plan I think would also allow that. That one I'm a little bit unsure of, but so that's how you'd be able to gain some of those wild faces. Okay. Okay, so Red, are you ready to go? Still making some choices? Okay, it looks like we're ready. So I'm going to drop down the screens, and we can get to rolling. And now that the red player has learned the tough lesson of how important it is to defend, it's still a close. Yeah, it's still, yeah. Well, you'll see. It's still a close game with one player at 9 and another at 2. And I just wanted to actually remind myself what happens if both players. So the end condition. Yeah, so what will happen is, because we do the attack and defense in a certain order, whenever either player reaches 0, the game immediately ends, and whoever is the surviving player is then the winner of the game. Okay, so for the question on the any dice and any dice, it can be any dice face, no matter what, as long as you add a dice on that spot and another dice of the same value, then it's going to be able to fulfill that requirement. So where it has any dice equal to any dice, whatever the dice face, as long as they're matching. Now, in most cases, that's going to be in areas of the board that are going to require other specific dice face. But for example, synthesis over in the power up section is one that only requires that combination of any dice equals any dice. So it's just equal dice faces. And that's the case when whenever there is the equal symbol, it's always referring to the dice face and the fact that it is the same for the two dice that are placed there. In the rules, they refer to that as the matched pairs. Oh, and I just picked up on the fact that that's actually also explained on the great reference guide on the screen in front of each of the players. So they're the matched pairs and exactly how all of that works. Not a problem, Red player. Okay, so green player's done. Red, are you still making some choices based on that? Let us know if and when you're ready. Okay, so both players being ready. Okay, so let's see what's happening. So, wow, okay. So we have, wow, okay. So we have a base attack of 6 from the green player, and then an attack kicker of +2, and then a multiplier on top of that. So it's a total attack of 8 times 2, so a total attack of 16. Yes, is the right response to that. That was an impressive roll to get all that you needed to be able to do that. That is one way to come out swinging. Okay. Yes, and it is 16 points of damage because, again, the multiplier happens after the attack kicker. So we're going 6 plus 2 for a total of 8 times by 2, so 16 points of damage. And a lot of the dice being used for that. So that then is going up against your defense of 3, which unfortunately is hardly enough to be able to block the 16. And so that will drop then your health down to 0, with the green player successfully defeating the hero. So the villain, the supervillain, wins this time around in KAPOW. Yeah, unfortunately, the 3 that you generated just not quite enough. But I mean, the fun of the game is the fact that it is a dice playing game, so you're going to have luck of the dice, 2 excellent rolls, and also a good set of dice based on the fact that you were probably gathering a bunch of those red faces, set up the green player to being able to do that. But it just depends on the flow of the game, how many dice faces you're gaining, and the luck of the dice each time you roll it. So, yeah. Thanks. Any other questions, either from the players, or I'm also going to check the stream just to see, because we do have a little bit more time left over. We're running ahead, probably not enough to really get a second playthrough in, but happy to answer any questions.
We didn't have any other questions on the stream, Chris, but we had someone who really liked it and left to go play their own game.
Okay,
like to set up KAPOW on their own and play their own game.
Okay. I just have a question quickly from the player who was playing through the Discord. What was your question? Okay, so I think it's a shop at White Wizard. I need to have this available to me right in front of me.
Yeah, I can type it in shop at whitewizardgames.com.
Yes.
Or if you are interested in KAPOW, you can still late pledge for the Kickstarter. And what that does is it gives you credit, and you'll be put into the pledge manager, and you can, back KAPOW, and also you can add in anything from our pledge manager, which would include any Kickstarter exclusive items from our past Kickstarters. And for KAPOW, we have volume. So you mentioned we're coming out with volume 2. Just to clarify, we have volume 1 was originally published by Two Tom Porcupine, and we're reprinting. We've made some modifications to volume 1, and we have volume 2 with all new heroes and villains. So there'll be two. There's 2 choices, and you can buy the 2 together as well. They're all super fun. You can try out all the heroes and villains here So here in this workshop, it includes the heroes and villains from both of the volumes. And also one of the stretch goals that we achieved in the Kickstarter was to do solo. And Rob was so excited about solo mode that he agreed that we do solo for every single hero and villain. So we've actually put some of them up on Tabletop Simulator. And when you originally go into the workshop, if you click on one player mode, you can play in the solo mode, and in the little notepad in the bottom right hand corner gives you instructions on how to play the solo mode. And there's also an update on the Kickstarter as well that goes into that, and that's super fun. Basically, he's designed, if you flip over the super board on the back in real life, in the physical game on the back is the solo play board, where it basically automates how that hero or villain plays when they're playing against you when you're playing solo against them. It's really fun. It's really awesome. And each one is totally different. And we have some of them in this implementation. We're continuing to design them. Those weren't designed when we did the Kickstarter. So we're, designing those as time goes by, but I'm super excited about those. And also, if anyone's interested in play testing, we're actually taking or has feedback. We're taking play testing feedback from this workshop, and also on the solo as well. So I can, I'll grab the link and I'll post it in here, so it'll be on our social media and on Twitch and on YouTube. But we have a form where you can fill out feedback, and if you do 5 rounds with an opponent, you'll be in the you get playtester credit in the game. If you like that kind of thing, that's really cool. But really, we just want to give people a chance to play all the heroes and villains and give us any feedback. We want them to be as awesome as possible before the game comes out. And thank you, Chris, for going through this in great detail. It was awesome.
You're welcome. Great. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed it, and we will come join us for some more games. We'll have Hero Realms coming out on Sunday at TotalCon, and we'll do another stream for that, I believe.
Yeah, we have Hero Realms on Sunday at 3. Is that right?
I believe so. Oh, it's 3 Eastern time. So I believe so.
Yeah, 3 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday, and tomorrow night we are streaming the Hero Realms campaign playthrough of the Lost Village. That's over on the charity board gamer stream for charity. We're going to be running through the first chapter of the Lost Village in Hero Realms, and that'll also be streamed on our Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/whitewizardgames. If anyone's interested in watching that, that'll have Randy and Rachel from our team, who are both super fun and high energy. Randy will be running the campaign, Rachel will be participating, and Chris Goodlet will be participating, and I'm sure they'll have a couple other super fun people too. Yeah. All right. So thank you. Anything else?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.